I just wait a little bit. Wait. I don't take this so seriously. Again, this is not a monetization project necessarily. We'll see where it goes. Doesn't have, uh, this ultimate agenda. In a way, it does, I suppose. I mean, the ultimate agenda is just putting myself out there and putting my thoughts out there, just sharing ideas that I have, because I think that there's a dearth of ideas that people don't really think, that they accept the reality more than they actually question the expectations that people have, expectations that a spouse or partner has, or children have, or grandparents have, or aunts and uncles and cousins and neighbors. And you just go up the ladder of all the expectations. And so I entitled this The Psychic Bitch Slap. And this term, I think the only reason I actually am doing this, because I thought that was a funny term, psychic bitch slap. But what do I mean by that? That's real simple. The psychic bitch slap is where you make a very profound existential statement that questions that basically has the ability to sort of shock a person into wondering, wait a minute, what the fuck? Am I doing something wrong or weird? Or am I being a stereotype? Because there is a lot of lack of self-awareness, because we don't try to know who we are. We actually guide ourselves too much by the ideas that they've given us. And this process is so deep, that things like sexuality and, politics, those are so superficial in comparison to the deep roots of the psychological dynamics. That's what we have to understand. What are the psychological dynamics of something? Psychological dynamics of power, of control, psychological dynamics of greed, the psychological dynamics of wealth, the psychological dynamics of poverty. Because you see, I have seen many situations where a person that we might expect to be a bit more liberal, quote unquote, or a bit more of with a greater awareness of social justice. But no, you see, a lot of poor people covet what the rich have. And they think, now we know that there are miserable rich people. That is a known fact. There are people who are rich, they commit suicide, they're miserable, they're not happy, they're angry, they're mad, they're driven by insane impulses. But the same happens to poor people. And I've seen this happen too many times, where a person really, they don't have, because they have been poor and their experience as a poor person has been so deep and intense, any opportunity to change that and move it into it where a person actually does begin to acquire nicer things in life, And all of a sudden, we want more and more and more and more. It's just not enough. Then we accumulate a certain amount of wealth and we feel empowered. We feel like, oh, the way I interpret reality is the only way reality can be interpreted because I personally have achieved success in this area. So this must be the only way. And there's that sort of this self-entitlement and this that's given, this false authority that's created. And of course, the more wealth we have, the more we can protect our ideas and our thoughts and stay away from the thoughts that might pierce the veil of the illusion. There are people among us that are driven almost entirely by the mechanics of behavioral conditioning, meaning that they are driven by the ideas and concepts that have been placed in their head, and those ideas and concepts aren't necessarily true. They are not necessarily true. See, that's the thing that people fail to accept is that in the abstract world, which we also have the ability to uh, navigate, but we don't. Many of us don't. We find it too scary. We find our thoughts and the places that we can go a little too scary. This vast openness, not everybody has the ability to accept the uncertainty. We have to have that absolute in our brain to put it all together. And that absolute is just an imaginary creation. It just seems real, but it's not. It's not real. I talk to people, this is a very difficult concept for people to accept. People want to believe there's a purpose. We define the purpose, but there's no purpose that is assigned from outside. There's no real human nature because we're actually not entirely human. We're not entirely a finished product. We are still in transitions and we're still in movement, of course, but there are different manifestations of us that are moving in different directions. Some are falling into a hole and some are flying in the air. You don't want to fall in the hole. If anything, you just want to skirt along. You don't want to be, you don't want to have your feathers ruffled too much. No, I don't, but they are ruffled every now and then because, well, I have my own personal sense of justice. I've thought about this. I continue to think about it. And I know for for me personally, I don't need to feel satisfied with what I have or don't have And satisfaction is not a measure of what I have and what I don't have. It can be if I make it that way. And it has been. I'm not saying it hasn't. But we have to watch out with the patterns that enslave us. And we need to speak up. You know, people say things as like, oh, but this is this way. He says, no, it's not. Not necessarily that I want to argue with you, but what you're saying is not true. You're relying on some false authority. You're saying this without any substantive foundation, without a base. You're just pulling shit out of the air and throwing it out. We have to be very, very, very mindful of the things that people say and the words that people use. Always watch out for those obligation words, those must do's, those have to's, there's necessities. These, I had a conversation with someone and they said, there's no purpose. Well, I mean, just to be, yes, the being is the purpose, to stay being is the purpose, but the way you manage that situation is going to vary. It can change, it can be different. It doesn't have to be a certain way. It manifests itself in a variety of ways. And life and death occurs every nanosecond. Boom, boom. So a psychic bitch slap, all it is just trying to shatter the illusion, shatter the veil that blurs the mind's eye. Okay, I guess that's it. I knew this was going to be short, and I just wanted to say it before I just run out and go grab my coffee. I won't run, actually, I'll walk, but I will. It's funny, when I do my walking, sometimes I'll, stretch my arms. I don't do patterns. I'll break into a short run, even if I'm wearing boots, even if I'm wearing clothes. Or I'll do a little dance as I walk along, or I'll change the cadence of my steps to vary things, to make them different. Those are good things to do. It's bad to fall in a rut, in my mind, because, well, bad and good don't really exist. And, this, we can say favorable or unfavorable, uh, to a liking or not to a liking, without a negative impact. There's all kinds of ways to look at things. There's not just one way. And that's what really pisses me off. Again, I'll talk about Webster Barnaby, this idiot in the house that lives in my city. A gentleman who is a ethnically Caribbean. Black. And he thinks he has the audacity, but he's a member of a congregation, or I believe the Trinity Church, which is one of the largest churches in this, and they indoctrinate children in this town, and they'll be getting more business thanks to Ron DeSantis. And it wouldn't surprise me that another school of equal size. Now, this one is definitely sized to give public schools a run for the money that is always being taken away from them by the asshole Christian fascist authoritarian absolutists. because they think that their worldview is the only worldview that is true. Some might think it's the only worldview that works. That's even worse, because what that means is that they do believe in controlling the population and having the population do the shit that they want them to do. And, you know, and they only have that because they've been able to rise to that position of socioeconomic power, but and privilege. It doesn't have anything to do. Well, it has some things to do with, that there's character, some components of their character, but it's nothing praiseworthy, or that gives them any exceptional talent. These are not authorities, and we need to make sure that we remind these people that they're not. Most of the people that are in government right now are business people. They're undereducated. They have no idea. They have not even studied human behavior, but yet they want to talk about it. They have not studied it, and they want to legislate it. They have no understanding. They are basing their legislation on superstitious assumptions. And nobody's calling them out on it, because they think that everybody has a right to be a superstitious moron. That the only people that gain from that are the 1% that control more than 50% of the wealth in this country. 350 million people that control more than 50% of the wealth. How much, we talk about how wealthy is it? Look it up, Google it, ask it. This shit's out there for your information. All you have to have is the idea in your head and ask the question. If you don't know how to ask the question, of course, that might be a problem. And a lot of people don't know how to ask the question. They don't fucking know. And I said, there are people who do not think in a deep way. Their thinking is very, very superficial. It's like the minnows on the, by the shore, little fish by the shore that are just eating, because this is the only thing that they know how to do. The mechanics in their brain are not giving them much more than that. And it's not their fault or anything like that. It doesn't necessarily mean that a person is stupid or anything like that. It's just that they've been conditioned to exist in that mold. Molds are created. That's what religion is. Religion is a mold. It is an archetype. There's different components. Worshiping. A God doesn't want to be worshipped. A God doesn't give a shit about worship. The only people who are benefiting from worship are the worshipers. It makes them feel good. But that's so pathetic. That's so sad. When you stop and think about it, what they're doing. Worshiping and praying and wasting their time instead of living. The past is an illusion. The present is confusion. And the future, your decision.